part of our communications to celebrate and let you know about the Women in Aviation and Aerospace Charter, we're introducing you to some of the movers and shakers behind the scenes who got the Charter initiative rolling. The very first person to speak to is Katherine Bennett, CBE and Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society. Katherine is a Senior Vice President of Airbus, leading the company's external engagement and strategy in the UK. Previously, she held roles in communications and spent several years based at Airbus HQ in Toulouse, France, running the global public affairs function. In January 2019, she was awarded a CBE for services to the aerospace and aviation sector. She founded and co-chairs the UK's Women in Aviation and Aerospace Charter and has also been instrumental in the Women in Defence activity. In March 2020, following the COVID-19 pandemic, Katherine took up the additional role of leading public affairs for Ventilator Challenge UK, a consortium which includes Airbus of UK manufacturers to turn around and deliver the urgent requirement to assist UK government in their national task to provide medical grade ventilators to the National Health Service. Katherine is also chair of the Western Gateway, serves on the board of International Aviation Women's Association and is a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society. Katherine, good morning.
Good morning to you, Liz. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, well, thank you very much for speaking to us. And I think what would be lovely to hear is, how has your experience been of leading the team behind the Charter over the last 2 years?
Well, it wasn't just me on my own. I had a fantastic, and there is a fantastic co-chair in Samati Sharma from Virgin Atlantic. And also the whole idea for a charter was the brainchild of a number of other people, including a dear friend of mine, Mary McLeod from Corn Ferry, who was very aware and involved in setting up the Charter for Women in Finance. So it kind of was a spontaneous idea that happened at, I'm very proud to say, an event held in a law firm in London as an event put together by WIAA, of which I'm involved. And we had the Minister for Aviation at the time, Baroness Liz Moscrop, and we suddenly started thinking, what could we do in the UK to focus on gender topics in aviation and aerospace? And this is when Mary said, you should think about a charter. So that's when it all started. And amazing momentum suddenly got going. I tell a story quite a lot that a couple of organisations who I knew were integral to get signed up to the Charter, I literally sent one email and within 2 minutes I got a reply from a very big aviation company saying, we're in. I mean, so that made me realise it was exactly the right thing to be doing and exactly the right time.
And I have to say, I was at that breakfast and the atmosphere was electric. It literally lit a touch paper. It's fantastic. And it's a brilliant idea. Someone signed up straight away, which is encouraging. What are some of the challenges that have arisen over the last 2 years in actually delivering the Charter?
Well, it's sometimes quite helpful to be a follower, as we were. As I said, the Women in Finance Charter in the UK had already got going. So we had the text there, so we looked at that, and then we had to adapt it for our industry. And of course, aviation and aerospace, it's airports, airlines, and obviously aerospace companies. So there's quite a lot of different nuances that you have to get right. So that was a challenge, getting the actual charter text. Also, there's always this eternal debate about targets versus not having targets, and we had to do some very careful wording in terms of that. There were some people who certainly really wanted to push harder and harder, and there were others who were happy to be engaged and involved but had to take things a bit more slowly. So I guess it's a good test of leadership and coalition building, isn't it, Liz? You know, you have to kind of sometimes move as fast as the slowest person, or sometimes maybe sort of lift people up a bit and encourage them. So that was a challenge at the beginning. The other challenge was obviously getting other signatories and having a good narrative to explain what it was all about. I'm very pleased to say that I found that quite easy because, as I said, I seem to be pushing at an open door. It was very powerful having people like Virgin Atlantic, having Rolls-Royce, having Airbus, BA Systems, you know, British Airways, IAG, EasyJet, of course, have done so much in this area, and of course the some wonderful airports in our country. So they were happy to get involved quite quickly. So when you had the narrative explaining what it was quite straightforward to be able to explain. And I was absolutely thrilled at a very early stage. Dame Deirdre Hutton, chair of the CAA, sadly she's retiring this year after an amazing service to the industry, but she agreed to be our patron. And again, that was something that was very invigorating when she signed up. But again, she did it most willingly, and that's the sort of attitude that I found very good. But you're right to ask what's the next challenge, because we are now marking 2 years, because it was signed, sort of announced in July 2018. So what's happened in these 2 years? So there's a lot more things to be done. Of course, we've had our crises on the way, as we talked today, Liz. We're both in lockdown. Country's still not back to its economic status as it was. So, you know, there's been challenges and there's a lot more to do.
And I have to say, if anyone's watching this and interested in the Charter, those meetings where it's taking shape are electric. They're so energizing, and listening to the debate and the real thought that's going into, like you say, you have to be as fast as the slowest member, and engaging and talk of targets. The discussions are really open and people are willing to engage with the challenges. So I think what would also be really valuable, because the intent is to bring more women into the industry and to bring them into leadership roles. What's your own experience been like as a senior leader in the industry? Have you experienced yourself any sexism during your earlier stages of your career?
So I'm sure everyone has stories about mistreatment at work, or sort of stories, you know, whatever gender you are. So yes, I do have some stories to tell. I worked in the car industry before I moved to aerospace, and before that I worked in a public relations company in London. And I think, you know, so that I started my career really in the early 90s. Gosh, that sounds such a long time ago. But I'd never really felt I never really felt I had a disadvantage being a woman. Maybe it was because of the particular work I was in public relations. There are a lot of women, but certainly when I moved to an in-house role in a company, you do notice that you're massively outnumbered. For me, you know, I was sort of in my late 20s when I moved there. I turned it to my advantage, and I very quickly learned to be quick and use humour. And more importantly, and I'd say this to people of both genders, you know, read around the topic, be interested, ask probing questions, sometimes be a bit annoying, and that helps you get noticed. But yes, there are some challenging stories, and there's times when I've witnessed bad behaviour, maybe when I was younger and I didn't call it out at the time. Now I see, very importantly, my role is to call it out and speak up if I see things that going the way they shouldn't. But it is drastically different. I've just been recently watching a series about Hillary Clinton that's been on the TV, and some of the things she was telling about her early career as a lawyer made me realise how it was so different in leaps and bounds from then, even when she was starting her career in the 70s, to me starting mine in the 90s, and then, you know, obviously the next generation now. One of the things I found most powerful, Liz, on the Charter, you're right, it's been electric in the rooms. But we've got a lot of young men helping us with the Charter. They're really engaged. There's a super chap called Nick Goss from GKN Aerospace who's been there from the start. And they really care about getting this right. And I did ask one of them once, as we were in our early days of the Charter, why are you so engaged? And they said to me, it's absolutely blindingly obvious this needs to be done. And one of the gentlemen said to me that his mother was a single mother, worked very hard, had 3 kids, and he saw her working hard and admired her for her energy and vigour and professionalism, and of course being a great mum as well. And he said he wanted to help more people like her get on and have careers. And I found that a very rewarding response.
It is, it's really touching. And there is also an upside for men too, because I think it can also, it can enable a larger facility for family life and for child rearing if we've got a more equal distribution of genders in the workplace in terms of childcare, etc., for leave. I think that could have a really big upside for young men coming into the industry too.
And it's all about building networks. I mean, that's what the Charter has really assisted with. I've made some fantastic friends through doing the Charter. You know, some people I knew, but you know, I've really deepened the relationship with them, and we have a cause to fight for. And again, you know, there's more that can be done. We've all been doing it in our own time. Our companies have given us a lot of support. So it's been very rewarding to see how far we've come, but you know, there's so many more things to do.
Yes, there are. And on that note, we've got suggested accountable goals and targets, which you were referring to. And I think obviously what we can track and measure, we can actually see progress. On an actual, more of a intuitive level, if we're at work, what would you say would be some signals that you would feel that this is working, what we're aiming to achieve is actually happening? What can you think that we would see in our workplaces?
So the eternal answer to that question is always pipeline. Have we got people in the pipeline ready to take on the managerial or senior top leadership roles? Because that's the measure at the moment. Is, you say, what's your percentage, how many people on your executive committee, how many people in your top level of management? And you know, some of our companies, you know, the figures aren't great, and for me it is just checking we do have this pipeline, and it's got to be a very live pipeline. And that is why I'm happy to play my part in promoting the fact that companies such as mine, that I work in, aerospace, aviation, is a great sector to be in and has many opportunities. And of course, people of our gender have a lot to give. So that's the thing for me, is the pipeline. Of course, there's the issue about, are enough women going to study getting the right skill set to be in our industry? Of course, it's a whole new world now. Digital's the name of the game. And of course, women are very strong in that area, and, you know, can develop a lot of their skills in other ways that I think the industry perhaps don't know they need. So that's one of the other answers. And, you know, being grown up, professional, calling out bad behaviour if you see it, and just generally encouraging. I love the book, the Sheryl Sandberg book, Lean In, and you know, it was a quick read, and I just learned a lot from it, and to talk about it quite a lot. It was a few years ago now, but you know, this whole thing about encouraging people to stand for positions or put your name forward. Just yesterday, I was talking to an Airbus female colleague who's an absolutely superb operator, and her boss is just retiring this year. And I said to her, I hope you're going to put yourself forward for the job. And it's so easy for people like me to say that to her. And she said, well, actually, yes, I had been thinking of it, but I wasn't quite sure. And I just feel sometimes you just need to give that kind of final shove, encourage people, and that really can make a difference.
And I can testify, when Katherine rolls you to do something, the invitation is so generous that it's definitely great to rise up and lean in. And what you said about networking too, in terms of getting involved with the Charter, the experience of being in the room with so many amazing people of all genders who are committed to the same cause, it's a great way to meet people and meet the right kind of people, because I think our industry is very much based on relationships.
Yeah, I mean, especially in an industry like ours, which do sometimes have some crises, you know, you can think, who can I turn to? Oh, who would know about this? Who would know about that? That's the other thing. Perhaps the other point I haven't brought out enough, Liz, is the work the Charter has recently done with Corn Ferry, actually, on a survey. Because before you sort of set yourself targets and what's our strategy going to be, you have to have a dip check. You have to know what the status is. And this survey has just been done, and the results are going to be coming out in the next few months, and been very enlightening in terms of some of the issues. So that's going to give us a big focus to build on in the future.
That's great, knowing where we're at, which is one of the tenets of the Charter. For you personally, what have been some of the highlights in the conversations that you've been part of during the Charter?
I think for me, I have been quite pushy, and people who know me will probably smile, but I've been really pushy in getting more signatories. It's something Samati and I really, as co-chairs, took, you know, we well realised it was one of our key roles, being an advocate. And it was just suddenly when Nick Goss, our guy who helps coordinate things, said to us, you know, we're creeping up to 100 now. And it sort of suddenly happened. And then we were able to mark that. And that was about a year ago. So we've like built up 100 signatories in a year. And now we're up to 200, which is an amazing thing to celebrate. And I don't want to just say, oh, you know, how's our tally going? It's got to be good quality signatories. They have to sign up to the values. But that's been very rewarding. Also, other companies and people have been most generous in their time. I do have a reputation about sort of asking, and I haven't had to push too much. GKN have been very generous in helping with the survey, as have Corn Ferry. Other companies have readily offered up their facilities and their venues for events. I know, Liz, you've been involved in a lot of them. You know, we've tried to have events around the country, so it's certainly not London focused. We've done Northern Ireland, Scotland, we've done South East, we've done South West, and we've got, this year I believe there's going to be an event in Wales, and then we're also targeting the northwest of the UK. So we're certainly levelling up for our charter too, and that's when you again get extra rewards, because we then have different kinds of speakers from different parts of the UK with different dimensions to share, and that's been incredibly rewarding. And you know, you have to just remember, Liz, you learn from every single person you meet.
True, and it's fun as well being part. It's very important, but it's actually, they're really fun events. They're very energising. Katherine, what is next for you?
So I've decided to hang up my hat as co-chair of this charter. I felt 2 years was a good time to have served. But I didn't want to just do that and just walk away. I'm absolutely delighted that we've found an amazing lady with a global responsibility, Jackie Sutton, who I know you're talking to as well, Liz, from Rolls-Royce, the Chief Commercial Officer from Rolls-Royce, who's going to step into my shoes as the aerospace co-chair. I'm absolutely delighted she's agreed to do that. We're already getting on like a house on fire. So the other reason I decided to step down from this is that in 2 years' time, I'm becoming president of the International Aviation Women's Association. So I've served on the board there for the last 4 years. And, you know, sort of taking a more global leadership role in this area. So I felt I had to let something go. And also in November, as well as all my responsibilities at Airbus, which of course my priority, I became chair of the newest powerhouse in the UK, the Western Gateway. Been pretty tricky at the beginning, that, because again we had general election, then we've had COVID, but there's been some interesting developments there, some opportunities, and of course you'll be pleased to hear, Liz, that gender is very much on my mind in my leadership role there. So I've got plenty of other things to occupy my time.
Thank you, Katherine. Well done. We wish you the best of luck and look forward to continuing to track your progress with your new projects.
Thank you, Liz.